It's Daniello here. I'm going to share with you very beautiful ideas about thinking big and becoming fearless. Okay, now there is a lot of different information that you can get about thinking big, and people will say like think of whatever it is that you want and like 10x it or something along those lines. And while these things are essentially possible, like they don't really have that sort of stickiness that they need to really work within you and manifest within you. Now, I've worked with personal development for so many years. I remember when I was 17 years old, I was like one of the first people that signed up to Tony Robbins' like 30 CD set that I, spent all my savings on to get because like I wanted to transform and transition. And I've tried lots of things between here and there. One thing I found and one thing I learned is that whilst it's easy enough to think big, and don't get me wrong, you don't want to think too small, because you will get what you can manifest. What you think, you will definitely direct energy towards and will actually magnetize it to you. That is truth. Okay, and truth is always truth. But the thing is, we all as people, we have these different layers around us. Like, so truth is truth, and the truth is that we are both part God and part animal, and we're eternal. Okay, don't get me wrong, if you're atheist, you might have very different opinions, but this is from the wisdom studies that I've followed, and the traditions that I've studied have deep roots in this understanding. Now, here's the thing. These different layers, which are basically manifested by the negative ego as a means of protection, kind of shield us from these things. So we can think about a concrete idea. Like I could say, look, I'm worth $1 million a year, okay? And right now, like I'm nowhere really near that. So I can think that, but then there's this thing called time that it takes for me to kind of grow into that. Now, what I've cultivated is kind of like a hybrid of like, esoteric meditation and this idea of thinking big. And I'm just going to share with you, I'm not going to give the instructions per se here, because essentially this is something that needs to be carefully crafted depending on your personality, depending on what your intention is, depending on where you are as far as being able to sort of like direct your mind and direct your thoughts. But so here it goes. Thinking about something really big and like I said, thinking like I'm worth $1 million, like it's totally possible. It's totally possible. But am I going to believe that on a deep subconscious level? Now, some people might go, yeah, I do believe that on a deep subconscious level. But there is a lot of people who would really struggle with going, say, from earning like $80,000 a year to being able to be worth $1 million, say, a year. That's a huge jump. That's a huge leap. And whilst you should definitely shoot high, you do want to also find something that's actually reachable. So what happens is when we take an idea and we start to think big. Now, if you want to just think big, but you also want to think creatively and expansively, then this is what you need to do. Okay, you need to be able to center yourself. You need to have an idea. Now let's call it a seed thought. Okay, now that could be an idea of value. It could be an idea of your aspiration. It could be an idea that you just have about what it is that is your like highest expression. Now, if you were to create a thought form about that, and so imagine like you've got one of those, like a coloring in book, and you've got this beautiful sketch. And when I say you want to build a thought form, you want to be able to sort of shade that in and give that more depth and more clarity, and for it to really, really clearly resemble what it is that you are trying to manifest. Now, a lot of practices and a lot of manifestation techniques will say like, get really, really clear on what it is that you want and like, pump it into your thought patterns every single day. Now, whilst this can actually work, what happens is when you're forcing a thought form like that, it kind of is creating a build-up, and it's becoming a point of tension that is essentially going to actually manifest in a way that maybe doesn't have so much fine direction as what I want to suggest. So I started off describing it, and I got a little bit off track, so let's get back on track now. So if you were to center yourself and have a seed thought. Now let me think of an example of a seed thought might be, my highest expression and deliverance of authenticity establishes the maximum value. Now let's just say that that is a seed thought that you sit with and contemplate on every day. And you contemplate it maybe, let's just say, for 10 minutes every single day. So get into a meditative space, feel that balance and feel that alignment, and you don't have to actually attach anything to that thought, but you contemplate that seed thought. Now that seed thought was not necessarily about an end game. If you noticed, it wasn't necessarily about an object. It wasn't necessarily about arriving at something. It was about a journey. It was about an unfolding within you. And so as you contemplate it, you might imagine, so I've got my eyes closed, I'm like in that imagining space, I'm really imagining what that looks like. Now, my suggestion is you do this every day, at least for a month. At least for a month. And what you do is you actually keep a diary, and when you finish that meditation, you actually jot down further developments on that thought form. So your highest expression might take one shape or form. It might reach a certain space, okay? And then what might happen is about a week later, it might evolve and expand more so. And you might see into this thought form more than what you could originally see. So what's actually happening there is the thought form is evolving the more attention you're putting into it. But remember, I didn't give you an objective to focus on. You didn't focus on the $1 million. You were focusing on your most authentic expression being of value. And you could reflect in that meditative space of what that value might look like to you. And so when you do this, it's kind of like emerging from within you rather than focusing on an end game and sort of like, well, it's almost like, well, that's going to happen, but I don't know how that's going to happen. And the thing is, when you focus on an end game, if it doesn't happen, people have a tendency to look at themselves as a failure. And that doesn't help anything. That doesn't help you move towards this. But focusing on the path, so to speak, focusing on emerging on that path is kind of almost like speeding up your evolution on that path. And yes, it does take structure, it does take concentration, it does take dedication, it does take focus, and it takes some certain amount of, willingness to be creative and adapt to something greater. Now, I've done this for years, literally on a daily basis, and I use it every day in my meditation. And if I was working one-on-one with you, I could give some personal instruction. It's not something that I can just say one size fits all. But I did give you an example, and what I want you to take away from this is that as people, I have found that a lot of the time growing into a space is way more powerful than focusing on an objective and trying to pull that in towards us. Because as we pull that in towards us, there is the law of cause and effect. And whilst we might be causing an effect, pulling that in towards us, a lot of indiscriminate other things can happen, which can have like other repercussions that can cause other karmic events to occur, and and it seems like, that this thing is coming closer to you, and you'll find that once you get it, it doesn't necessarily have that same amount of joy compared to when you actually grow into a space and you actually magnetize that as part of growing into that space. Because what happens is you evolve and grow, and as you grow, then the acceptance of this higher belief becomes a lot more possible. Your subconscious is much more willing to let that in, and the idea of attracting that, and look, when we attract these things, they don't necessarily come in the shape or the format as what we think they need to be. Like, we do need to have a level of surrender. As a matter of fact, I have a 7-stage manifestation process, which does incorporate a lot of these things that I've spoken about. The last step is absolute surrender. Like, you actually have to surrender to the paradox of that if you focus on it too much, you're actually going to push it away. So you have to be in complete surrender to it and allow it to happen. Okay, so this process of manifestation sort of bypasses the problem that a lot of people have of focusing and focusing and focusing on the object, and a lot of the time that pushes it away. You feel like a failure, and you actually end up further away from what it is that you're trying to attract. But by focusing and cultivating a thought form from a seed thought, you emerge into a space where it becomes possible for this new reality to become a potential in your field. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope I've been able to distinguish the differences there. So like, yeah, if you want to have some personal instruction on this, you can reach out and connect with me. We can get on the discovery call and we can talk about what that would look like for you. Otherwise, check out my Facebook group, Flow Abundance Mastery, where I share a lot of this content. I share a lot of this this juicy stuff within the group. It's a private group, it's invite only. There will be a link below here, and I urge you to check it out because you can ask me questions there and I can basically offer some free group coaching within the group. But again, if you want some more personal one-on-one attention, reach out to me and we'll jump on a call and we can see where that goes. Anyhow, look, I hope you got some massive value from that. I hope it was clear enough for you. And if not, maybe watch it again and see if you can distinguish the difference between the two processes. So thinking big is more than about just attracting a goal. It literally is about becoming big. It's about creating thoughts that expand and become higher in definition so that you can grow and you can emerge into that space. And that allows your thinking to even become greater and more expansive. Anyhow, enough from me. Again, I hope you got value from that. It's my intention to serve you. Tell me what else you'd like to know, and I'd love to be able to tailor some content towards that. Anyway, big love from me. Take it easy. Bye for now.